NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Lilly Endowment, a private foundation supporting NPR's coverage of religion and spirituality, and Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
And good morning for day 5 of our December fundraising campaign. I am Josh Booth, supervising producer for newscasts here at IdeaStream Public Media, with Igal Kaufman, multimedia journalist. Good morning, Igal.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to be here with everybody, picking up the reins from Amy and from Andrew, and we're going to get to the program in just a minute here. First thing, though, we are focusing today on the bond between WKSU and you, all of those who rely on our trusted news, our thoughtful reporting that we do, and the meaningful conversations that we have right here on the air with you every single day. It's a relationship, really, that's been built over 75 years. This is our anniversary this year, 75 years, starting back in 1950. And our message, Igal, this week is you can be the bridge, because when listeners give, they strengthen the relationship that allows WKSU to serve as that bridge, connecting everyone to all of those that important information, that local journalism that I mentioned, those in-depth interviews that are so important here throughout Northeast Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, that's relationships are what we're all about. You know, we go out every day, we tell the stories of the people in Northeast Ohio, and we create those bridges with every story we tell, and then those create new stories. And we can't do that without your help, both as the people that tell those stories to us and crucially at this time as the people who support us as we do this all year long. So now is a better time than ever to help us reach our goal. We've got an amazing match today that we
sure
can
do.
It's
Yeah.
amazing, and we can unlock it if we get all that up to $50,000. That'll get us an additional $50,000, and you can help us do that right now by giving us a call, 844-217-8897, or visit us online at wksu.org.
And that's thanks to idea leaders from Gates Mills, Oberlin, Chagrin Falls, and Lakewood. So definitely give us a call, sign on online right now. Let's get to the Sound of Ideas with Stephanie Haney.
Welcome to the Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for being with us. In April of 2017, 22-year-old Molly Jane Matheson was killed in her apartment in Fort Worth, Texas. Days later, another woman, Megan Gettram, was also killed in that area. Those women were killed by the same man, who later pled guilty to the murders and to multiple sexual assaults committed over the years. He's now serving a life sentence in prison. The case prompted bigger questions about how systems respond to reports of sexual violence and how earlier interventions might prevent escalation. In the aftermath of her daughter's death, Matheson's mother, Tracy, founded Project Beloved, a nonprofit organization that advocates for survivors of sexual assault. One of its key initiatives is creating more trauma-informed interview spaces within police departments for survivors who are sharing their experiences with investigators. Today, we'll talk about the implementation of one of these interview rooms at the North Ridgeville Police Department in Lorain County. With us now for this conversation, we have Tracy Matheson, the president and founder of Project Beloved. Tracy, welcome to the Sound of Ideas.
Thank you very much.
We also have Greg Pitek, captain of the City of the North Ridgeville Police Department. Greg, thank you so much for joining us. We'll make sure that we have Greg connected as we get into this conversation. Now, if you would like to be a part of the conversation, we want you to give us a call. That number is 866-578-0903. You can also send us an email at soi@ideastream.org, and you can also always reach us on Instagram. You can send us a message at The Sound of Ideas. Tracy, we'd like to talk about the work that you're doing now, but we also want to learn about your daughter. Can you please share with us a little bit about Molly Jane and what you'd like people to know about her?
Absolutely. Molly was one of 4 kids, the only daughter in the group, and so she often joked that she was the favorite child. Not true, but she and I did enjoy a very close relationship, and I describe her as light. She was everyone's friend. She had a great sense of humor, went out of her way to make you smile, especially to make you laugh if she felt like you needed to. She was just a source of great joy in our family.
We have that joke in my family too, Tracy. I'm the only daughter, so I like to say I'm the favorite daughter. That plays a little better.
Yeah, somehow that seems to have a little privilege, it seems.
Sure. Can you talk to us about the name Project Beloved and how Molly inspired the name for the organization you're now a part of?
Yeah, there is what I call the beloved story. When I found Molly's body in the floor of her shower, I noticed that she had a tattoo. I didn't know she had any tattoos, and it read beloved. I contacted a friend of hers to ask about the tattoo. She explained to me that actually Molly had other tattoos, but that one was most important to her. And I asked why, and she said because she knew she was beloved in God's eyes. And that was probably the most important sentence that I could hear in that moment. A few days after Molly was killed, actually a week later on Sunday was Easter, and a good friend who knew Molly from the time she was very young texted me to say that she was thinking about Molly as she sat in church, and these words came to her. It was be loved, and beloved. Well, my friend Michelle knew nothing about the tattoo, but there that word was again. Then following her murder, as we were kind of exploring this idea of a nonprofit, we knew we were going to need money. A friend had visited, as friends do, at a time like this and brought me a gift. And it was a bracelet, and it had Molly's name stamped on it. Of course, I loved it, and I put it right on. And my friend owned the company that made the bracelet. And so I went to lunch with her with the intent of asking her, could we make bracelets that say beloved and then sell them? And that would be a way to generate some income. And so I went to lunch with my friend Martha, and we had this conversation, and I shared with her what I've just told you. And she stopped me before I could ask. And she said, Tracy, do you know what the bracelet that we gave you, do you know what that's called on our website? And I did not know. And she said, the Beloved Bangle. And so, this word that just kept appearing, a word I've always found to be a beautiful word, was such an important message to me. Straight from God. She is his beloved. He was with her. She was not alone. And he's got her. And so as we sought to name the nonprofit, it was important to find a way to weave that word into the name.
It sounds like you started thinking about this very quickly after this happened. As we mentioned, it was in April of 2017 when you found Molly Jane. So what did it look like after that, the timeline for getting what came to be called Project Beloved up and running?
Yeah, it didn't take us long to really realize that there was something we were going to have to do. This was just a parent's worst nightmare is the best that I can describe. And as the failures of the system were uncovered and we realized that she could be alive had someone done something. So we started spinning our wheels on what does that look like? I knew nothing about what a nonprofit was, how to even begin one, what is it we could do. But we really started focusing all of our thoughts on, okay, so what could we do? If people support us with their financial donations, what could we do that would directly impact and perhaps prevent another victim from being sexually assaulted or experiencing the horrific trauma that comes when reporting a sexual assault, or prevent another mother from knowing what I know. And so we started working on that. People came into our path that knew how to do this, that offered up, hey, how can I help? I know how to do this. Let me do that for you. And so we, started getting paperwork filed toward the end of 17 so that we were ready to officially say Project Beloved is here on the 1-year anniversary in April of 2018.
I think we have Greg Pitek with us now, captain of the City of North Ridgeville Police Department. Greg, thanks for being with us here on The Sound of Ideas.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Greg, I'd like to ask you from the perspective of the City of North Ridgeville. We know Tracy's story for getting Project Beloved up and running and motivation for reaching out. How did the City of North Ridgeville connect with Project Beloved and become aware of it?
Well, Summer Oliva, our secretary, found out about the project through her contacts at North Olmsted Police Department. And so she got the ball rolling by contacting them, and we went through the process of getting the project done, and after hearing about Molly Jane and Megan's story and the work that Tracy did, we really were supportive of it and felt like it would be something that we could definitely use in our agency.
We became aware of it here on The Sound of Ideas by finding a Facebook post from the city of North Ridgeville sharing about the creation of a soft interview space, which is one piece of what Project Beloved does. So, Tracy, can you explain to us what is a soft interview space?
Yeah, I did not create this term. It was a term that existed, and as I started studying sexual assault and the investigation of sexual assault and best practices and that kind of thing, I learned that, number one, the most important thing is to understand trauma and to conduct the investigation through that lens. And a soft interview room is a component of a trauma-informed investigation, and it is basically what it sounds like, and it's creating an environment that is warm and inviting instead of cold, stark, and sterile, so that when victims are coming to a place they don't want to be, which is a law enforcement agency, to have a conversation they don't want to have with a person they probably don't want to speak to, and that is a law enforcement person, just because it's a stranger, and that is a very intimidating thing. And so if we can create a space that looks like a place you could actually sit down and be comfortable, and you can have that conversation with the understanding of trauma, then perhaps you can make that investigation process easier to manage. You can prevent adding further trauma to the experience of the victim. And ultimately, you can get more and better evidence so that you can make an arrest and take a rapist off the street.
Now, if you're watching us on Ohio Channel or you're taking a look at this on the Idea Stream Public Media YouTube page, you know that we just showed some images of what this soft interview space looks like at the North Ridgeville Police Department. So it really is that transition that Tracy described that was very striking when I came across this on Facebook. It really was a plain white room, a very simple folding style table, not necessarily a folding table, but flat, transformed into something with textures and tapestry and rich colors and a more warm and inviting space. Greg, can I ask you about your experience? I know that the space hasn't yet been used. It was just implemented. But when you're talking with people who are reporting sexual assault, what that's like and how you think this space might make that a different experience?
Oh, absolutely. Well, first of all, it's a privilege to speak or be on the air with Tracy, and finally getting to speak to her about her project, and we're just really appreciative of all the work and that she put into this project and provided for us here at North Ridgeville Police Department. But as an investigator, you basically you don't want to re-victimize a survivor, and so part of that is to get the initial interview completed with them feeling in a warm space that they're going to be able to provide more information without being in a sterile environment that we use for the same interview room for suspects in a crime. So our goal and intent is obviously to, create this warm space that our survivors feel, comfortable, speaking to a complete stranger, like Tracy had mentioned. That's not easy to do, and so if we can make it easier and provide support, a supportive environment for them, we're all for that.
Tracy, we know in the case of what happened to Molly Jane that the person who attacked her and took her life had victimized other people. Can you talk to us about what you know about whether allegations against this person had been reported before what happened with Molly Jane?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there were multiple reports going as far back as 2012, so 5 years before Molly was killed. There were that case in particular at Plano Police Department where basically the detective did not believe the victim and made it very challenging for her and made it very clear that he didn't believe her. And so There came a point where the victim had to make a decision. Do I continue enduring this additional trauma and trying to convince him that what I say happened did happen, or do I save my sanity? And so she opted to save her sanity and was labeled the victim who no longer wished to cooperate. We had another case in South Padre where the victim reported immediately, happened at a resort, which is a beach community in Texas. And that detective did believe the victim and did what I would say is a really outstanding investigation and made it clear to the victim that he was going to fight for her. But in this instance, the case went to the district attorney, and the district attorney declined to take it. And eventually there was a CODIS hit that linked these two cases together. And CODIS is a database for DNA. That's a very simplified explanation. But this allowed South Padre and Plano to find out about one another and find out about their cases, and to be able to see that they had identical patterns. The exact same perpetrator was in both cases. And it gave them a chance to reconsider conclusions that they may have made. Plano opted to say that it made no impact on their case. And in fact, they could share their case files with South Padre, but they were going to do nothing. And furthermore, they were not going to tell the victim about the CODIS hit. South Padre went back to the district attorney with information of the CODIS hit, and the DA continued to decline. And there's a third case that we know of where it was a Jane Doe situation in another Dallas suburb, and that case was investigated. The labs got involved in processing the kit, and you hear about the backlog of rape kits, and that's where that becomes a part of our story. The lab took close to 3 years to finally conclude that the DNA that they found in the kit actually was a match to this same individual who had been at the party with this Jane Doe. They communicated this information to the Allen Police Department by email, as is practice, and that email went to an inbox that nobody opens. And so 41 days, Allen Police Department had that email in their inbox. 41 days later, this suspect killed my daughter and then killed Megan Gettram 5 days later.
Wow. On the topic of testing and sharing information, I want to share an email now we received from David in Cleveland Heights. David writes in, Project Beloved reminds me so much of a local journalist in Northeast Ohio who almost single-handedly forced the uncovering of rape kits among local and county police and then led to solving some cases and finding some rapists. These efforts are so urgent when the powers that be aren't following up yet. And who David is referring to is a journalist by the name of Rachel DeSalle. She did this reporting while with the Plain Dealer here in Cleveland. Now she's with the Cleveland Marshall Project and Signal Cleveland here in the Northeast Ohio area. Thank you very much for sharing that with us, David. And Tracy, thank you so much for talking with us about that piece of the puzzle. I want to go back to trauma-informed care for just a moment. You were talking about how soft interview spaces are a piece of trauma-informed care. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what that means for people who might be needing to report an instance of violence or sexual assault, that particular approach in general?
Yeah, for so long, we have misunderstood. We've said that this is how a victim should act or behave in the aftermath of a crime like a sexual assault. And we have said, oh, well, they're not acting the way we think they should, so therefore it must not have happened. But now the experts have done all the research, looked at the brain, and been able to tell us exactly what happens in the brain and how there are any number of responses that are indicative of trauma. And so it is so important for people who are working with victims of sexual assault who have experienced a horrific trauma that they understand the science of what happens in the brain, and they understand the impact that trauma can have, and how no two victims are going to react in the same way, and the same victim may act very differently one day compared to the next. And instead of concluding, oh, the victim's lying, or it didn't happen that way, or any number of other wrong conclusions, that is actually evidence of trauma and helps corroborate what the victim is telling you. And so it's going from this the way we've always done it, and basically interrogating victims with who, what, where, when, why. The brain is not able to process and answer who, what, where, when, why oftentimes. And so having a conversation that is more guided and directed by the victim, and they go down a pathway that you as an investigator maybe thinks, oh, this isn't really important to me. But in fact, if you can stop and listen and follow the victim, and they mention something and you, oh, tell me more about that. And letting them direct that conversation and look at it as a conversation instead of an interview or a interrogation, and framing questions in a way that is not suggesting that you blame the victim for what happened or you're doubting the victim. We as a society, that's what we do with the crime of sexual assault. Our default is to doubt the credibility of the accuser, and we elevate the credibility of the accused. And when we're aware of that, and we can kind of retrain our brain and not go to those automatic conclusions, well, then we have a much better environment to gather information, collect evidence, build a case, and do better about holding those who commit this crime accountable.
Greg, as captain of the North Ridgeville Police Department, can you share with us from your perspective as the person who's doing these investigations how informative that is and the different kind of results that you get when you do take that trauma-informed approach when you're talking with someone who's reporting a sexual assault or a violent attack?
Sure. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Tracy. We have this approach in law enforcement that, just the facts. You hear on TV shows, just the facts, ma'am. And that approach through the years, doesn't work with survivors. As Tracy mentioned, there's just the brain reacts differently, and our goal is to train our officers, our investigators, to be aware of that. You may only have one chance, to interview a survivor or to speak to a survivor for them to get their story out. And so if we have the approach, this, traditional approach that the victim may feel that, we're interrogating them instead of, trying to make it a space or an interview or an environment where they can feel comfortable, telling their story. That's definitely going to, help with our investigations and, the outcome for our survivors.
Greg, how long did it take from the time that you connected with Project Beloved to the time that the soft interview space was up and running and actually functional and available for people?
I know Summer had brought it to our attention sometime last year, and so obviously nothing works fast in government to get approval and to make changes. But I would estimate it would took a total for us to get everything installed and set up about a year. I don't know if that's typical with other agencies, but I would estimate that's how long it took for us to get the interview room set up.
And that's open and available now for people. Is there any special process that people need to go through to make sure that they have access to that space if they want to come in and report something in North Ridgeville?
No, absolutely not. It's here, and one of the reasons why we did send out the post was to make people aware, the public aware that, hey, we do have this space available, and so we're a 24-hour facility. So anytime they want to come in and speak to us, this room's available.
Tracy, when you first started this, as you said, things kind of really got launched and running in April of 2018, a year after the loss of your daughter. What was it like when you started approaching police departments? Were departments receptive? Did you get any pushback?
It's funny. We don't approach police departments, and that was a decision we made early on, that we would not solicit a soft interview room, because I felt like that if I asked, they're going to say yes, and if they don't understand why, then all I'm doing is providing interior decorating services. And so we put it out there on our website. I had to Google a picture of a soft interview room and put it on there. And I felt like a poser, like, because we'd never actually done a soft interview room. It took a full year before we got our first ask. And, you know, the snowball started rolling, and we got our next ask and our next, and then things would get quiet. And I thought, oh, we've done our last room. And then we would get another ask. And, you know, we were doing 1 room a month. And then eventually it got to a place where our wait list was so long, we did 2 rooms a month. And then we increased that to 3 rooms a month. And then in 2025, we've done 4 rooms a month. Our wait list now extends until October of 2026. And so I'm fairly confident with North Ridgeville, they probably waited about a year because that is just, you know, our capacity is kind of controlled by, well, what can we manage from a Project Beloved a manpower standpoint as well as a financial standpoint by those who support us. You know, how many rooms can we fund? And so I'm amazed and thrilled. It's sort of a mixed bag. I'm thrilled that word is spreading. People are understanding and recognizing that this is a best practice and this is how we should be conducting these kinds of investigations. It's also disheartening to know that these rooms are even needed. But in the long run, I hope that we can get down the road. I don't know if that's 5 years, 10 years, and look back and see that the world that we have created when sexual assault happens, victims no longer have to decide, should I report, can I report, is it safe to report, or should I just keep it to me? That they can know that when they speak their truth to whomever they speak it, it is going to be received in a way that feels supported, they feel believed, they're directed toward healing instead of just experiencing further trauma.
As we wrap things up here, Tracy, one final question for you. Have you gotten any feedback from any of the spaces where the interview rooms have been put in place?
I have, and I'm always honored when agencies reach out to share their stories, but overwhelmingly positive, telling us that victims walk in and you can almost see a visible exhale and, oh, you're not taking me into one of those spaces that I've seen on TV. I can sit in this space. That chair looks comfortable. There's a rug on the floor that's attractive, and you know. But then I also hear that the experience of law enforcement having these very difficult conversations is also improved. And so in my book, that's a win-win, and certainly evidence that we're on the right track.
I want to thank you for taking the time to have this conversation today. Tracy Matheson, president and founder of Project Beloved, we appreciate you calling in.
Thank you very much.
And also Greg Petek, captain of the North Ridgeville Police Department. Greg, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We'll take a break now, and when we come back, we're joined by a Crain's Cleveland business reporter to talk about city permits and efforts to reform that process. This is The Sound of Ideas. I'm Stephanie Haney. It'll be back in just a moment with that conversation. Now we'll turn it over to Idea Stream's Josh Boos and Igal Kaufman. They'll tell you how you can support public media and shows like ours. Hi, Josh.
Hey, Stephanie. Good morning. Very important, very insightful conversation. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank your guests. Well, this is day 5 of our December fundraising campaign, and we are coming to you asking for your support. I want you to indulge me for a moment before we chat with Igal. I want you to think about the relationship between you and us here at WKSU. Those who rely on the trusted news, the thoughtful, in-depth reporting that we pride ourselves on, interviews like the ones that you just heard here on The Sound of Ideas with Stephanie. That relationship has been built over time, right? 75 years. And we're coming to you today recognizing that, mentioning that, saying you can be the bridge. When you give, you strengthen that relationship that allows us to serve as a bridge to the community, connecting that information with with you. And today we are asking, we are telling you, Igal, about a match challenge, up to $50,000. If we can raise that during this campaign, that unlocks an additional $50,000 thanks to some anonymous donors in Oberlin, Chagrin Falls, Lakewood, and Gates Mills.
Yeah, we can't thank them enough, and it's such an amazing opportunity to double the money. So when you give right now, you, in effect, if you can help us reach that and unlock that match, you can double the impact of your gift. And so, as I mentioned, I'm Igal Kaufman. I am a multimedia journalist here at IdeaStream, and I am out in the community every day, meeting people, making new relationships, and hearing from these people how important IdeaStream is to them. And so I think, now there's never been a better opportunity to join this amazing, relationship that we have with the community and help us keep doing this all year round. And so we actually have an amazing advanced metric to help us unlock that $50,000 match.
Yeah.
We just need to get an additional 67 contributions over the course of today, maybe over the course of this shift. There's no reason to limit yourself.
Yeah, 85 contributions would get us to that match challenge. We need 67 more. We already got some people calling in.
Yeah, we got, and thank you so much. Nicholas in Hinckley, thank you so much. That was a new member. We thank you so much. And then we've got wonderful, an anonymous donation from North Olmsted, Michael in Cleveland, and Clifford in Chagrin Falls. Thank you all so much. We really couldn't do this without you.
And you can donate now at WKSU.org or give us a call at 844-217-8897. Igal, both you and I out in the community doing stories every single day. What I love about IdeaStream is the breadth of stories that we do. It's, so unusual maybe is the right word. You're seeing and listening to stories here that you're not seeing anywhere else or listening to anywhere else. And that's one of the things that I love. You have that. We give the time to really tell those important stories. And we hear from people about that. And that's what they expect from us. They expect a higher level. Our members here at IdeaStream Public Media, and that's what we give. And that's what we pride ourselves on.
Yeah, I mean, we just heard that incredibly important conversation just happening on Sound of Ideas. Later this week, I have a story about an art project involving birds and jazz and dance. And so, just like you said, we're covering the things that are most important to you, in your day-to-day life and in making society function. And we're covering those things that are important to you in making your soul sing, and appreciating those things. We got another one to thank you. We're down to 66 left. And this one from Sacramento, California.
What?
Yeah. It might
Online.
be.
Wonderful.
I know this seems like unlikely, but it might be DeMar DeRozan. He's a forward for the Sacramento Kings. I'm a huge fan. I've often, said I love him. It may be that he remembered. And
you're speaking French now. I have no idea what you're talking about.
I'm just saying. So for the listeners who follow basketball, if you think DeMar DeRozan just donated, it's possible. That's all I'm saying.
Anything is possible today. We do not want to let that $50,000 sit at the table. And with our relationship with you, we know that you're going to step up to the challenge this December for our fundraising campaign, because if we can unlock an additional $50,000, that is huge, significant for us here at IdeaStream. Not only focusing on the different reporting projects that we are doing, it helps us plan for the future. We have several big stories coming up. We have a volunteer firefighter story coming up in January, a whole week of stories there, focusing on the trials and tribulations and some of the things that need to change or that should be changed for volunteer firefighters. And then a whole section in February coming up on AI that the entire content team is working on. AI.
This is the first I'm hearing about this AI you speak.
Yeah. Artificial intelligence, and so much more to come on that. But the point being, we can plan ahead because of your support. We can get these projects moving. 844-217-8897 or WKSU.org. We would love to hear from you. We want to say your name here on the air. Let's head back, though, to the Sound of Ideas with Stephanie Haney. Support is provided by
Cleveland Clinic. Catalyst grants support research into how brainwaves affect memory decline with aging. These grants help advance discoveries that can improve patients' lives. clevelandclinic.org/catalyst.
Mohican Gardens and Conservatory, offering lakeside weddings and greenhouse receptions. Located midway between Cleveland and Columbus. Indoor and outdoor natural garden settings for any weather. MohicanGardens.com.
You're with The Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for staying with us. For years, developers and residents in Cleveland have raised concerns about the pace, predictability, and transparency of the building and business permitting process. In other words, it's slow. Long delays and unclear requirements can impact investment, raise costs, and leave would-be builders and business owners frustrated. This month, Crain's Cleveland business reporter Zachary Smith published an in-depth look at how the system is working in practice, and more importantly, how it isn't working. He joins us now to share some of the efforts at reform and what it means for the future of development in Cleveland. Zachary, welcome to The Sound of Ideas.
Thank you for having me, Stephanie.
We appreciate it. Now, if you are listening in or watching and you'd like to join the conversation, you can give us a call. The number to do that is 866-578-0903. Maybe you have a comment or a concern or an experience you'd like to share with the permitting system in the city of Cleveland. You can also send us an email at soi@ideastream.org, and you can send us a message on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Zachary, let's paint a picture here of kind of what's going on here just at the base level. How long does it take to get a permit approved in the city of Cleveland?
It really ranges. I will say the majority of permits, according to city data, take 0 days. You go in, you want to install a new fence, and you get a stamp of approval right there and then. However, about a quarter of the permits every year are more than 1,000 days. So the range is from 0 days to 1,000 days plus. Mm-hmm. And that is kind of hard to predict for any would-be developer or anybody trying to do work because it's not just large projects that are affected in that regard.
Okay, so aside from the fact that people generally aren't patient, I would say, if you're trying to get a permit and you want to do something and you have a plan and you want to move forward, what's the gravity of the situation? Why are developers and residents frustrated? What are some of the pitfalls that come from maybe if you're in that 1,000+ days category?
Sure. It's hard to determine how much a project is actually going to cost because of construction costs, because of lending, as of recently, tariffs that may be implemented on materials that you would need, and you often can't secure all of those contracts until you get a permit because they want lenders and businesses want to make sure that the project is moving forward.
So that can be tricky in terms of planning and what you're trying to do there. You followed different projects on your reporting on this issue. Can you give us a sense of some of what those projects were and what it looked like for them?
Sure. So one of the projects we talk about is the Vitriolite, which is a business or a small business hub over in Detroit Shoreway, Ohio City. And one of the problems that they encountered was at the time they needed a parking ordinance because any new building, any new business needed to have off-street parking. The problem is that it's an old historic building that the entire footprint of the building was the property line, so there was no place to put a parking lot. So that really extended the amount of time that it took for anybody to get a variance on the building for the project to move forward. So even though it had nothing to do with the actual construction of the building, parking was holding everything up. Eventually that got approved and the Vitriolite is there as it stands today, but it still took quite a bit of time and talking to different committees and councils and going through councilmen and all that kind of stuff.
Parking, the bane of all of our existence.
A little bit, yes.
in a lot of ways, in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. Okay, Cleveland Mayor Justin Bibb shared your reporting on social media. One of the places that he shared it was LinkedIn. I'm going to read what Mayor Bibb posted when he shared your reporting. He says, "For years, Cleveland's permitting system hasn't been good enough, and the frustrations in this article, in your article, Zachary, make that clear." He goes on to say, "Let me be direct. I understand the reality, and I'm not running from it. My administration inherited archaic systems and deep technical debt, but fixing it is our job now. At the time that he posted this, he referenced, "Tomorrow, we take an important first step with the launch of Cleveland's new permit portal, a more transparent, user-friendly navigation system that finally brings our permitting process into the modern era." The rest of the statement reads, "This won't solve every issue overnight, but it will give residents and developers clearer visibility, better tracking, and a foundation for continued improvements in the months ahead. Rebuilding a system this complex takes time, but I will keep pushing until Clevelanders can truly feel the difference." And he ended the post asking to hear from Clevelanders. He says, "Now I need to hear from you. If you've been burned by the process or seen it work well, tell me what needs to change and what's starting to improve." He asked for a direct message on social media. He had posted this on LinkedIn, so asked for a direct message on social media or an email at mayorbib@clevelandohio.gov, saying at the end, "Let's fix this together and make it easier to bet on Cleveland's future, not harder." So I'll ask you, Zachary, that statement, does that track with your experience with talking with your sources? Do you think that's a fair and accurate statement and representation of what's happening?
I think so. I think that Mayor Bibb identifies that a lot of developers are frustrated. I have certainly heard from my sources that they're frustrated mostly with the speed of what it takes to get a permit approved here compared to other places, but also just the process in general going through, especially again for larger developments that could need 10, 12, 14 permits from different departments. And we know that this is important to the city because Mayor Bibb put out an executive order last year looking to overhaul the permitting process. And the new portal that he just announced is the first, I think, deliverance on that executive order.
What's he talking about when he's talking about the technical debt?
Sure. So this isn't a new problem within the city of Cleveland, right? When in the data that we went through a decade's worth, all the way back to 2015, and permitting has been rough the entire time. And rough being it has taken a long time, 1,000+ days to get a permit, everything we have already spoken about. And there has never been any meaningful approach to trying to fix that. So when you take something that's been as is for the last 10 years and try to reform it, it isn't an overnight act, so to speak. The biggest thing that I think the new portal is addressing is the city uses a system called Acela. And before this administration, Acela lived on a server in the water department and was barely used. Now it is implemented across all the departments that are using that are involved in the permitting process, and now that is how we are tracking all of the site plans and new applications and how they're going to essentially be transparent to both developers and to themselves to see where the holes are. But, that took time to implement through multiple departments and through City Hall and to train people to use that. That's the kind of technical debt that he's talking about.
And does that also refer to the archaic system? What was the system of processing these permits previously before introducing this new process?
Very paper-based. You could either, there was a place to apply online. People would come through City Hall and apply there. If you knew somebody, you would go. There were multiple points of entry, which kind of makes it confusing and hard to track.
So who are the players in this process when it comes to this, in terms of, maybe City Planning Commission or other departments that may have been involved in getting this new process going?
So to get this new process going, it was led up by the Buildings Department. Economic directors have been involved. The Planning Commission is certainly involved. Landmarks Commission, zoning, any step along the way before somebody's able to put shovels into the ground is essentially involved, because you do need a permit for anything, to install a fence, like I said, to have an HVAC system, install solar panels, electrical work, sewage, and it's again for larger commercial buildings, but also just for your home, just to get an inspector out to make sure that something is correct and safe for you to work on and to occupy in, because it is important to get these permits, right? It is about safety. No one wants to work without them, because you want to ensure that both the project is safe when you give it to whoever the buyer is, but also workers are safe when they're working on the site.
We have an email now from Daryl in Euclid. Daryl says, so what does a better system look like that is not simply a rubber stamp, but also balances the need for timely resolution? Is there anything that your sources have said that might suggest what they would actually like to see in a more improved system, Zachary?
Probably unsurprisingly, they would like to see it be faster. But we've had sources and stories say that, you know, if the city does half of what they promised to do, then it would already be light years past where they are. I looked at when Mayor Bibb put out the executive order, he also put out a permit overhaul tracker to see how that process is going, which is on the city's open data site. When we published a story, only a handful of tasks were completed. If you go to that site this morning, half the tasks are completed. And a lot of them involved getting Acela up, getting people trained on Acela, and making sure that this is a system that is now working and available to everybody. Transparency is good, and it allows you to see where the holes are, but it's still a small piece to what will eventually be, you know, making sure that everybody is working efficiently, things are kind of working in tandem as opposed to just in iterative processes. And then the only with that will time kind of start to condense and projects get kind of move along the pipeline faster. It is the first step of a longer thing, but what developers would like to see, at least what they have told me they would like to see, is a faster process, a more efficient process, one that you don't have to, you know, wait multiple weeks from different departments to get everything, where you just kind of walk in, here's my project, here are the plans, if it's a good project, right, of course, and then get that stamp of approval, maybe go ahead of the planning commission for that final like design approval or whatnot, but less steps, faster turnaround.
It is amazing the number of things you do have to get approved in a project when you're trying to do something. I think it's not necessarily something that people realize, and it can be definitely cumbersome. Can I ask you, as we kind of start to wrap things up here, how are permits sorted and processed? Are they, you know, rated by urgency? Does that maybe help you get that 0-day turnaround, or is there any kind of system there?
So the city told me there was not. That it's kind of as it comes in, it comes out. So you are kind of in line in a queue for your permit to get approved. Now, not everybody is looking to install solar panels, right? So like those might get through the process a little bit faster. For those who are impatient or need things to move a little faster, you know, we tell a story. We talk about how a couple of sources in the story went to economic directors, have called their council representative to kind of move things through the process a little bit faster. You shouldn't have to use City Hall that way, but that is how some of that has worked. But part of what the hope is with this is that eventually the city doesn't want those things to happen and that everybody can go through this process at the same time. But as it stands right now, you kind of just approach it any which way that you need to get it done.
Yeah, you don't want to think you have to have a connection in order to get your fence up or get your parking lot for your business or whatever it might be. What can you tell us about the new portal and how that works, how that will work for people?
So the new portal has been soft launched. It is essentially a planning room for people to update or to apply for their projects. So instead of having individual building permits now, you now have a project permit. So you can kind of, because like I said, you need multiple permits for larger development. So now you can kind of see them all in one spot instead of tracking individual building numbers. Everything is digitized. If you are a homeowner and you don't have a commercial scanner like some of these architects do, there are scanners at City Hall now that you can scan your work, and then it'll go into this planning room, and then you can also see where in the process in which departments that are relevant. Necessary for you, relevant for you and your project, where they are, how long they've been there, and if they are pending or if they have been approved, and like what the next steps are. And it is being positioned as this is good for the developer, but it is also good for the city, and they are also looking at to see kind of where the holes are. If there is a lag in zoning, then that means there's a need for more staffing or more attention over at zoning, right?
More informative, it sounds, all around.
Yes.
All right, Zachary, thank you very much for your reporting on this. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephanie.
That'll wrap up the show for today. To get the last word on today's topics, you can email us at soi@ideastream.org. Now, tomorrow on The Sound of Ideas, we'll have a very exciting discussion about embracing the cold weather with Carrie Leibowitz, author of How to Winter. And then we'll have a new installment of our music podcast, The Shuffle, with their best of 2025. If you missed any part of the show, you can listen to the Sound of Ideas podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and also watch on the IdeaStream Public Media YouTube page. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you very much for keeping the conversation going here on The Sound of Ideas. Before we say goodbye, we will send it back to IdeaStream's Josh Boos and Igal Kaufman to tell you more about how you can support the great programming here on 89.7 WKSU. Hi again, Josh.
Hey, Stephanie. Good morning to you. Fantastic show, as always. Certainly appreciate it. We have right now a $50,000 match challenge from anonymous idea leaders in Gates Mills and Oberlin, Chagrin Falls, and in Lakewood today. When members reach that $50,000, it unlocks another $50,000 for that trusted news and information that you rely on right here on IdeaStream Public Media. This is the moment that you can make your gift go farther. Give now at WKSU.org or 844-217-8897. Multimedia journalist Igal Kaufman is joining me in the studio this morning. Morning, Igal.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
And we're hearing from people already.
Yeah, we keep getting them. We're down. As you said, we can unlock that $50,000 match, and we're about 63 contributions away. I know you're thinking to yourself, how do you know how many contributions if you don't? It's advanced metric in math these days is crazy. But I can tell you that we only have 63 to go, and that is thanks to Frank and Hudson. Thank you so much. Walter in Akron, and a new sustainer. Thank you so much, Brian in Cleveland. We couldn't do it without you, and you could be just like Brian in Cleveland by giving us a call now, 844-217-8897, or visiting us online at WKSU.org.
Let's talk about that relationship, too, between you, who is listening right now, and us here at WKSU, because that relationship of a sustaining member means so much. That's reliable giving that makes WKSU's service possible every single day, from the local journalism to the cultural storytelling. Igal, last break you mentioned some of the stories that you've worked on in the past. I love how you phrased that. What did you say? You see a little glimmer of hope or something like that.
To make your soul sing.
Your soul sing.
That's what we try to do with every story we do here, and we try to shine a light on these relationships, not only that we have, but that you have with each other out in the community.
Yeah, and your commitment is the bridge that keeps this station very strong. And as we close out 2025 here, we ask that you continue that commitment or even consider increasing your gift altogether. You can do that at WKSU.org/donate or call 844-217-8897. As Igal mentioned, we need 85 contributions to unlock that $50,000, that additional $50,000. Right now, we only need 63. We're down to 63. So we're chipping away at that slowly. We're on day 5 of our December fundraising campaign here, and we're really looking to you to step up and support us. 844-217-8897 or WKSU.org.
Yeah, and we just mentioned Brian, who's a new sustainer. Being a sustainer is one of those things that, as you said, it keeps us going all year long. And it's one of those things that you can sort of set it, forget it, and feel good about it. I know I found recently a zombie subscription in my credit card, and the regret I felt at having thrown that money away on a thing I wasn't using was profound. But imagine that you discover that you've forgotten that you've been a sustainer for IdeaStream. That would make you feel great, right? That's like discovering that you made a mistake that is keeping the community happy and healthy, and there's nothing better than that.
And it really helps us pre-plan, too, looking ahead to different reporting projects throughout WKSU here, and it can make such a difference in how we go forward into 2026 with our mission, with our reporting content. So we really want to hear from you this morning, and you've stepped up before Northeast Ohio. We know you will continue to do so. We've gotten the calls and alerts